In this lesson, we're going to be covering binary data. And binary data is any data that is not text. So text is sort of like an HTML file. You can open it up, you can look at it. Text files. If you ever try to open up say a PDF or an MP3 or a video file and actually look at the code, it's all what's called hexadecimal. It's a bunch of ones and zeros, or it's split up into groupings of 4, but it is completely unreadable without the program necessary to interpret it. So for binary data, for the most part, we don't store it in a database, but there are going to be times where that may be necessary. Perhaps like hospital images of MRIs, X-rays, stuff like that that needs to be kept long term. Perhaps scans of documents for legal firms or government. Or I know the government used to use databases to store satellite photos. And what we will do is go ahead and actually load this data into the database for storage. So once again, make sure your database is up and running, your VirtualBox is up and running. Make sure you are connected through a terminal to your box. And there is a zip file I need you to go ahead and download. And it should have a folder called Images with a couple of PNGs, a PSD, and an MP4 in there. And first what I need you to do is copy these files over to your VirtualBox. And to do that, we need to open up FileZilla, access again, your main directory is here. Go ahead and navigate, so you're looking at whatever your folder is where you stored the zip file. Make sure you unzip the file. And what you can do is you can just take the images and you can either right click and hit upload, or you can drag it to the right. I'm just going to hit upload now. And you can see here it's transferring the files. Now just to confirm it's complete, I'm going to go over here and type ls-l, and you should see here a new folder called Images. And if we cd to Images, there should be the PNG files, the PSD, and the MP4. So once those files are over there, we can get rid of FileZilla. We don't need it no more. And let's go ahead and talk about binary files. Binary files are handled through something called GridFS, and I put the link in here in case you want to look at the full manual of all the different things you can do with GridFS. But we're going to go ahead and create a new database, call it image1, img1, and we're going to store those images and those videos in there. And we're actually going to go ahead and upload those images directly into the database and add metadata to those files so we can look them up later with some amount of accuracy. So here are the commands. I went ahead and of course have them in a text file down here. If you want to go ahead and list the images from the command line, again, not from Mungo terminal. We don't type Mungo at this point. You should have the $sign. It's Mungo files -d for your database. The image database we're going to call is img1. You can create multiple databases and have different images in different databases. But if we give it the command list, what that's going to do is just list all of the files, which currently we don't have any. So in order to go ahead and upload a file, I'm going to do an ls-l here. You see one of the files here is called fullsail1.jpg. If I want to move that file and load it into the database, I could say Mungo files -d for the database, put, and then fullsail1. And if this wasn't the direct path, meaning maybe it was in another directory, you would have to put, /user/temp/ whatever else to get there. But since we're in the same directory as the files, meaning we cd to images, we can just use the file name. And it said edit file. Wonderful. So if we go ahead and do this list now, Mungo files -d image list, it says we have fullsail1.jpg, and here's the size of it. Well, if you can go ahead and copy all of those commands, we can just hit paste and it will run them all. And then we can go ahead and run the list command again, and what we'll see is it did upload all of those files. And these files actually exist in the database at this point. So now that we know they're there, we can go ahead and actually start playing with them. So let's go ahead and start up Mongo at this point. And let's do show DBS just to make sure there is our IMG database. I'm going to say use IMG1 and show collections. And there's two collections in here we haven't seen before, FS chunks and FS files. We can upload binary files to any database, but when it does get uploaded, it will create these two collections. And I put the format in here. It'll store stuff like the ID, which is just an object ID, the length, the chunk size, the data was loaded, an MD5 hash, a file name. It does keep the original file name, the content, an alias, and then we can put metadata in there. So there's FS files, and then there's FS chunks. And FS chunks actually is where the binary data is. You don't mess with this file. You do not touch this one at all. But let's actually take a look in there. So if I go ahead and I say db.fsfiles.find, well, I get a lot of data. So let's add on a pretty. And what we see here is that there is an ID, chunk size, and uploaded date in ISO format, which is like a standard format, the length in bytes, an MD5 hash, and then the file name. And that is here for all of them. I believe they may have depreciated the alias. They may have. Okay. What is also important, though, is we're going to be able to add metadata to these, which we're going to do in just a moment. But for now, I want to go ahead and actually search files from the operating system. So I'm going to exit. I'm going to cd space ... because I want to be in my main directory, meaning if I hit pwd, it should be /home/adb. And what I want to do is I'm going to create a directory called export. So let's do mkdir export, because we're going to download the files from the database now. And once we do that, cd to export. And if we do an ls, there should be no files in here. Now, if we want to go ahead and do a search, well, let's start with doing a list. If I do Mongo files -d the image1 database list, I get a list. But imagine I had thousands of these. I wouldn't exactly want to go through and have to scroll and look. So they added on a search. I could say MongoDB data -d for the database image1 search, and then give it some type of search criteria. So I could say search for full sal, and then it will return all the file names that contain full sal. Oh, well, I don't want full sal. I want something with the word guide in it. Well, it didn't find anything. That's because that's case sensitive when you do the search. So if I say guide, now it shows me, oh, there's that Hitcher's Guide. So I can search through any of these. Now, once I actually have one, I can go ahead and download those. And in order to do that, we're going to do this. Mongo files -d, before we used put to put files, put to put files in there. I'm going to use now get to pull them out. So all I need is the file name. And if I say get that one, well, it says finish writing. Okay, what does that really mean? What it means is if I do an ls now, there's the file. I was able to retrieve the binary file from the database. And this will work for MP3s, it'll work for PSDs, video files, pretty much any file you can think of. You can go ahead and upload it. But let's go ahead and go back into the database and see something else. Let's go into Mongo again. And let's hit use IMG1. And let's do the show collections. And I'm going to go ahead and take a look at that file system, FS files. So I can go in through here, and if I need to get the name of the file I want to download, I can search for the size or the upload date to help find it. Again, I can do any type of find against here like I would any other collection. Here's where things get different. If if I want to add data, I can say, let's do an update. And I'm just going to pick this. So I need to copy that one because over here this is someone else's object ID. I don't know whose. But I'm going to set metadata and then into there internal ID equal to some value. So imagine whatever this file is has some type of internal ID. I can go ahead now and run this. And if I do my find again, now we have a object here called metadata with internal ID. Well, we can add several items inside of there, and you should always do it inside of your metadata. At least that's what the documentation says. So maybe we'll add on that this data belongs to an organization ID of 319. So now if I run this, we have an internal ID and an organization ID. Perhaps you can have an owner. Maybe if it's a photo, you can say the GPS coordinates of where it was taken and the time it was taken, and perhaps even the direction, north, south, east, west, or in degrees where it was done. So you can put a whole bunch of information along with this file that now makes it searchable in any type of, you can query it in any type of a program that can attach to Mongo. So maybe if you're dealing with thousands of images or thousands of videos or whatever, maybe you're a television studio that just has so much data and you want to start loading in your commercials into your database. You can start doing this and putting your metadata, so when you say, oh, I just need a commercial for Tide detergent, you can go ahead and say, search where the metadata is Tide detergent, or the organization name or company name is Tide detergent, and it can return back all of their files. So normally we don't store we don't store binary files in a database unless there's a reason to, especially not web files. And the reason is if you want to go ahead and access a web file, you have to go to domain.com/images/ and then a file name, meaning it has to be accessible from your file system in order to do it. So if we did that, what you would have to do is pull the image out of the database each time someone viewed that file, which may be necessary if it's a proprietary and maybe a very private photo, but it's probably not necessary for every image in your database. It would just be a lot of reading and writing for no reason.